Good evening. Tonight we're going to learn how to compare and order fractions and decimals, especially negative fractions and negative decimals. Okay, so let's look at our first example, graphing in negative fractions and decimals. Well, what I would like to do here is I would like to graph the opposite of each one of these. So we're going to graph the opposite. Graph the opposite and the integer given. So if I'm looking at 3/4, okay, well, I know that I can start at 0 and I can count by fourths. So I can have 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. And then I can put my dot on the line for 3/4. Well, the opposite of 3/4 is just the same distance, just on the other side of 0. So if I'm looking at the opposite, I need to go to this side, -1/4, -2/4, and -3/4. So there is the opposite and the integer graphed on the same number line. So let's look at -2/3. Well, once again, I'm going to start at 0, and now that my denominator is 3, I'm going to count by thirds instead of fourths this time. So now I'm going to go up 1/3 and then up 2/3. And then I need to go to the left as well. So I have -1/3 and -2/3. So I need to graph -2/3 and its opposite. So -2/3 is right here, and +2/3 is right there. Okay, now let's look at -1.6. Now this is our decimal. So now if you notice, I have the tenths here. So if I wanted to start, say we're at negative, so let's say I wanted to start at 0, and then I could go straight to -1 and +1, but I now have to go to 1.6. So now I'm going to have negative, and then I'm going to have 1.1, and then 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, all the way up to 1.6. That would be on that side of the line. And then I have to go the other way for my -1.6. So -1.1, -1.2, all the way up to -1.6. And then I graph my line right there. Okay, and then let's look at 4.3, and we're going to simplify this one a little bit. If I have 0, I know that this is, say, 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, so I know that 4.3 must be just a little bit off of 4. So then I have to go the other way. This is -1, this is -2, this is -3, -4, and then -4.3 is just off a little bit. So here's +4.3 and -4.3. Okay, so why don't you take a moment and pause it and try those on your own questions. So you want to graph the number and its opposite. And I want you to include at least 5 numbers on the number line. So 2 on each side of the 0 at least. Okay, welcome back. So now we're going to compare fractions and mixed numbers using a less than or greater than sign that we talked about in class today. One thing I want you to write is, with negative numbers, okay, more is less. So we kind of have to get our brain wrapped around that. So for example, if I have a -7 and -5, I'm going to think, well, 7's bigger, so it must be a bigger number. Well, -7 is actually less than -5. That means it's colder outside. It means I owe somebody $7 instead of owing them $5. It means I'm 7 feet below ground rather than 5 feet below ground, so the -7 is actually a smaller number. Okay, so let's look at our fractions here. And we talked about in class today, we actually made our own number line. So why don't you take a moment and pause this out and get your number line that we did in class. Okay, I have a scaled down version right here. And since we're only comparing our negatives, I only have the negative side showing, but both sides are useful. So right now I'm looking at -1/2 and -3/4. Well, if I wanted to, I could just simply go to my number line and find those numbers on the number line. And then think about what it means to be less than. Okay, so I'm looking at -1/2 and -3/4. Well, I'm going to take this little, and you can use your pencil, but I'm going to take a little piece of paper and I'm going to mark where -1/2 is. -1/2 is right there on my number line. Notice it says -8/16, but it's also equivalent to all of those fractions as well. And then -3/4 is right here. So I'm going to put my little mark right there for -3/4. So now I have a visual aid. And since -3/4 is more to the left, it is less than -1/2. So I have -1/2 is greater than -3/4. Now if you were comparing 1/2 and 3/4, 3/4 would be greater than 1/2. But remember, in negatives, more is actually less. Okay? So since this is a bigger fraction, 3/4, it is less than the -1/2. And because -3/4 is more to the left, it is less than. Okay, so let's look at B. -4 and 5/6 and -4 and 1/6. Well, if I'm just on a number line, I know for sure I've got -4. Okay, they're both -4. So I don't even have to worry about the -4 anymore. I need to compare the 5/6 and the 1/6. And I need to see which one is smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and graph. Since I don't have any 6th on my number line, I've got to kind of create my own number line. So now I have -4 and 1/6, and -4 and 2/6, and -4 and 3/6, -4 and 4/6, -4 and 5/6. Okay, so now that I'm looking at it, well, let's go back to our little yellow pieces of paper. Well, let's mark -4 and 5/6, and then we're going to mark -4 and 1/6. And you ask yourself, well, which one is furthest to the left, which is -4 and 5/6. So I know that that one is less than -4 and 1/6. And once again, if you just look at the fractions, 5/6 and 1/6, 5/6 is more, so that's why it is less. Okay, so remember, with negatives, more is less. All right, so now let's take a look at our third one here. I have -1 and 3/4 and -1 and 7/8. Well, if I were to compare on a number line, here would be my -1. And I would have all of my -1, and I would want to use my eighths. So I had -1 and 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. But if you look at our nice number line that we've already created, I already have the eighths in there. So I can just simply go to my number line here, and I can just look at my eighths because I'm only trying to compare my 3/4 and my 7/8. So I'll go to my number line and I see -3/4, and then I have 7/8. Well, 7/8 is right there. Okay, so now I'm looking, okay, well, which one is furthest to the left? -7/8. So that means, because the ones were the same, they kind of cancel each other out here. So that means that -1 and 7/8 is less than -1 and 3/4. Or -1 and 3/4 is greater than -1 and 7/8. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to order these integers from least to greatest. So remember, with negatives, more is less. So let's look at the numbers in general. First off, they're all negative. So we have to have that thought, more is less. They're all negatives. Okay, so let's look and see, well, which one is the biggest number out of them all? Like biggest without the negative. And -3 and 1/10 is the biggest. So that means that is the least number. Because if I had my number line, he would be all the way to the left. Okay, and then my next biggest number, well, now it's between -5/8 and -2 and -2 1/5. Well, 2 1/5 is a bigger number, so that means it is smaller than -5/8. And then my last one is -5/8. So I would have a temperature of -3, of -2, and of less than 0 right there. They are in order from least to greatest. Okay, let's look at B. It says -1 3/4, -1 9/16, -1, -1 5/8, and -2. So I need to put them in order from least to greatest. Well, most of them have a -1 except for this -2 here. So that would be my least. And then also, most of them have a fractional part except for my -1. So he is going to be way on this other side because he's my bigger number. And now I just have to really put in order my 3/4, my 9/16, and my 5/8. Well, I'm going to go to my 9/16 graph, and I'm going to graph each of those. So I'm going to have 3/4, which is right here, and then I have a 9/16, which is right there, and I have -5/8, which is right there. So as you can see, they're all fairly close to each other, okay? But -1 3/4 will come first because he is the furthest left. Okay, -1 5/8 will come next because he is the next. And then -9/16, -1 and 9/16 will be third. So in order, -2 all the way up to -1 with all of those mixed numbers in the middle. Okay, moving on to example 4. We have 2 more questions. So same with fractions. Decimals is the same idea. More is less when you're talking about the negatives. Okay, so if you're thinking about it, you have 3 8/100ths, or you have 3 8/10ths, or you have $3.08 or $3.80. Well, the bigger number here is 3.8, but it has a negative, so that really means that it's worth less. So 3.08 is less than, or is greater than, -3.8. If I were to have some type of graph here, and I would have, let's say, -3 and -4, -3.8 would be here, 3.08 would be here, -3.8 would be closer to 4. So that means that this one is smaller. Okay, looking at B, notice right away you have a positive and a negative, and that is always the easiest kind of problem because I would rather have 30 cents than owe somebody $1.20, and that's what that says. Which one's better, owing somebody $1.20 or having 30 cents in your pocket? So you feel the positive numbers are always bigger than the negative numbers. Positive is always bigger than negative. So always look for those easy ones. If you're comparing a positive and a negative number, always look for those really easy ones. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to take some time and answer these 4 on your own questions. And then be ready to work hard in class tomorrow and ask any questions that you have. Have a great night.